Your journey can only begin when the self-doubts stop. The first step is harnessing your bravery within. Believing in you is your host, Sean Dumas.
Hello and good day to you all. My name is Sean, and I'd like to thank you for tuning in to another weight loss episode of Bravery Within. I'd like to take just a second to say thank you so much for tuning in to another episode. You guys are fantastic. The podcasts are continuing to grow all the time. You guys are making my YouTube page get more and more popular. We're getting more and more hits. And I wanted to say thank you very much for that. It means the world to me that you guys are still continuing to tune into all my episodes. We're approaching 60 episodes out there right now, so it's really, really cool to be able to say that, and you guys are listening and you're commenting and writing in. I just wanted to take just a second to say thank you so much for doing that. It means the world to me. So, as I was kind of going to lead into in a little bit today, and I don't know if there's really an easy way to lead into this episode, but I wanted to try to give you a little bit of background on, I've been talking about, my weight loss journey and the things that I've had to overcome. And one thing that I kind of grazed on this subject, but I didn't quite get into it. And I was sitting there when I was writing up my notes for this episode. I got to thinking here, this is probably something I probably should address and see if it's something that kind of resonates home with you to try to help you guys a little bit. So, it comes down to episode 28. It's all on how you view food. And today's episode is all about that. And I want to talk to you about it. Everything is about food. We're going to be talking about, unfortunately, food addiction. And I'll be very, very honest. Before I started my weight loss journey, I knew that I was big. I knew that I really needed to lose weight. I knew that, as my pant size continued to grow at an exponential rate, and I couldn't fit into my shirts and had to move them up, I knew I was getting bigger. But I lived in delusional land and just said, it's no big deal. I've got no one to impress. I don't have anybody there that's important in my life here to share my life with. So I'm just not going to do it. And the sad part is, and this is not a healthy way of looking at it, I actually used the fat to hide behind because most people are repulsed by fat people. So I did that there, so I didn't put myself into a position of being in a relationship or being there with somebody or sharing my life with anybody because of all the hurt that I had gone through, which led into how, a lot of it was the reason why I gained so much weight. I mean, over 300 pounds over 30 years. There was a whole lot of me. I don't mean that in a good way either, but I literally hid behind my fat to try to stay out of relationships, try not to meet anybody. And I also used it as a crutch to basically work through a lot of the dark stuff, a lot of the bad things that I had gone through in my life. It wasn't until it just flat out hit me, and I have to be honest. Probably one of the big wake up calls was the two mild. I don't know if they were severe panic attacks or if they were mild heart attacks, but I had two severe ones. And when you're sitting there and you're sitting on your couch, and you see your cell phone, it's within arm's reach. It's literally a foot away from your body. It's sitting there on the arm of the couch because I put it there. And your chest hurts so bad that you almost quit breathing. And you literally cannot move your arm over to get to the phone that's 1 foot away from you and dial 911 for help. You got a problem. I was terrified. I sat there for about 10 minutes before I could move again. My heart was running so fast, and it was just basically ready to explode out of my chest. Now, I'm sure it probably was just a panic attack, a severe panic attack, because the work I was at was keeping me under some horrific stress, and there was basically didn't have anybody that I really could talk to because I don't want to burden my family and my friends with the problems. They come to me all the time for everything, and it just it doesn't work the other way. If anybody that's got a few years on you, kind of like what I have, anybody that's younger than you just they can come to you, but you can't go to them type of thing. And I don't know if that really makes much sense. Some of the things probably don't make sense I talk about, but this is probably one of them. But it was that moment when I realized that, wow, I can't do this anymore. I can't hide behind my fat to, for all the pain that I went through, instead of talking to a therapist, which I really should have done, and there's a lot of good professionals out there. Don't get me wrong on that one there, but there's a lot of people that want to help. And I mean, I wanted to be a therapist. That's what I wanted, to be a school counselor. I wanted to be a school teacher. And that was my biggest dreams. That's all I ever wanted to do, is I wanted to help people. And I still today want to help people. So it's really hard for me to open up and talk to people, because I like listening to them. I like helping them. I like, pulling them out of a bad place and getting them back on track, and having them roll down the road again, and knowing that I had a little bit to do with getting them back on track. I've seen too many people. I mean, when I was younger, I had 4 friends that committed suicide, and that leaves a wonder in the back of your head going, could I have done more? Could I have said anything? There's so many what ifs, and you never get the answers for people that leave this earth too early, and because their pain is so great and their problems are so great. I mean, there's always a solution. There's always a way out. And if anybody's listening out there and you're contemplating it, I just don't want you to think you have no other options, because I speak from experience. When I was 18, I tried running my vehicle at 90 mile an hour into a bridge, and I was unsuccessful at it. I still don't know how I didn't run into the bridge, but I didn't. And I realized at that point that, well, there must be a reason why I was put on this earth, and to continue to help people. And all of that, all of this fed into my food addiction. I mean, I ate my feelings, and I've said that through quite a few of the podcasts and the episodes and stuff in the past. And I know you're probably tired of hearing it, but honestly, that's what I did. Is instead of talking to a professional, which I should have done, and I mean, if you're heading down that road, please talk to a professional. There's lots of folks out there that want to help. But I didn't. I was raised that you just don't talk to a therapist. You don't go to a doctor. You don't, being a man, you just don't talk about your feelings. You don't acknowledge them. You just keep moving on. So that's what I did. That's the way I was taught. That's the way I was raised. So you don't really know any other way. So from that point on, from about age 18 on, I mean, I was already starting to put on weight because I was working at a fast food restaurant. And I'm not blaming the fast food restaurant in any way, shape, or form. I'm the one that ate it. It's not their fault. It's my fault. I made that decision to eat those burgers and fries and everything else. I mean, it was my decision. I'm not blaming any way, shape, or form of the fast food joint that I worked at. They were good to me. I worked there for 5 years and I enjoyed it. But from that moment on, essentially, I just basically ate my feelings. So from age basically 18 on, I used food as a therapist. That wasn't the best thing to do. That wasn't, the best route to go, because literally what I would do is, I would wake up in the morning. The first thing is, okay, what am I having for breakfast? So then I would get something for breakfast. But while I was eating breakfast, I was already thinking of my mid-morning snack and my mid-morning snack and lunch. And then that led into my afternoon snack. That led into supper. And, I basically cooked most of the meals for my family and stuff. So one of the reasons that, basically how I kind of rationalized it is, I'm thinking ahead for my family. I'm always planning ahead, make sure that they've got a good meal on the table. My son's taken care of, so I'm thinking, but so as I'm going through the day, literally food consumed all of my thoughts. And the moment that something else bad would creep in, I would just immediately run to the cookies and the brownies and my lemon meringue pie that I so adore. I would use that to self-soothe, and that wasn't the right way of doing it. So I had to start figuring out something new. And honestly, it wasn't until I had those heart episodes. I don't know. I never went to the doctor, and I'm sure there's going to be doctors that are going to yell at me and everything else, but go ahead and yell. I just don't have, some of us just can't afford to go to the doctor. That's really what it comes down to. And I couldn't afford to go to the doctor. So you push through it. You just hope that the heart doesn't explode and keep going. And that was kind of my wake up call. And then my friend Rebecca, who was on the show and stuff there, she was running into a lot of problems, and she discussed that in episode 8 there about the weight loss surgery. And I was seeing the struggling that she was going through, and I mean, her life literally was on the line. She had to go through that. And what I realized at that point is okay, if she's going to do it, I don't want her to go through it alone. And it's time for me to pull myself up by my boots and do something different. So that's what I did. I finally realized that, okay, she went through a nightmare of hell for a year and a half before she ever got the surgery. And I realized if she can go through all of that, then I can simply change what I'm doing and how I look at food and start making changes to make my life better. It wasn't easy. I mean, there's nothing about losing weight that's easy. I mean, there's no magic pill out there. I mean, I keep reading as I'm doing research for the podcast. I'm always reading up that somebody's always coming out with this bigger, better pill that's going to take all this weight off. You know, you're going to drop 50 pounds in 5 minutes or something stupid like that. I mean, there's all these yo-yo diets that are out there. And I do lots of research, and they say, well, restrict your carbs, restrict your fat, restrict your calories, restrict. I understand all of that stuff, and there's a lot of them out there. When I read these articles, they just infuriate me because it's like, okay, I understand. Yes, we do need to cut back. We indulge too much. I indulge way too much. You know, when a simple cheeseburger and a small fry and a small drink would have sufficed to get me through to the next meal, I had 15 double cheeseburgers, 3 large fries, and I had about 7 refills on a pop. None of that was good. So, you know, you take 10,000 calories in right out of the shotgun when you only need 2,000 per day. So I ate 5 days worth of calories in one meal because I was trying to self-soothe. I was trying to just eat my feelings away. And sooner or later, it caught up to me. And it did in over 300 pounds. It was just like, it was an amazing wake-up call. I was like, okay, what am I doing? But I see all of these yo-yo diets, these fad diets, these new things, these new better ways of doing it. The problem is they're good for maybe a month or two at the extreme most, but it's not a long-term solution. And that's what I always ran into was I needed a long-term solution. I needed to be able to sustain my weight and do better for the rest of my life. Because, I mean, when I started down this road, I had to admit to myself on 1/1/22, I had to admit to myself when I started this weight loss journey, I wasn't going to be able to turn around. I wasn't going to be able to go back to the way I was eating. I wasn't going to be able to basically quit. I had to do this for my own health. I saw what Rebecca went through, and she's amazing. She's strong, and she's still to this day. I'm hoping to get her back on the podcast again, and I wanted to talk to you guys about everything that she's went through, give updates and everything else. So I'm hoping to get her on the show here soon. And I wanted to talk to you guys to say, this is the new fresh hell that I've went through to get to this point. So I figured that if she could do it, I could do it. I just had to do it in a different way because, as I've explained before, my body is broken. I have a hard time walking. I can't exercise as the regular person does. Walking a block will almost kill me anymore because my joints are fried because of some medicine that the doctors put me on, fried my joints. And they were trying to help, and I try not to be bitter at them or anything like that there, but I have a hard time walking anymore. And it's sooner or later with my reconstructive back surgery, that doctor did an amazing job. He took care of me. I was only supposed to, basically walk for a year and a half, then he figured I'd be confined to a wheelchair. And almost 20 years later, I'm still walking. So that doctor is amazing. He took care of me. He's allowed me to take care of my family, to go out and earn a paycheck so I can pay my bills and put food on the table. But I still, no matter what, through the divorce, through so many heartbreaks, through bad relationships, the loss of my parents, the loss of my business, the loss of my home, loss of all my savings. We went through COVID. All of us went through that godforsaken nightmare. There was so much that we've all been through. And my whole life, along with, to self-soothe, I didn't know what else to do. It was like, you go from being molested for 8 years, and then you run into being raped, and then you try to commit suicide, and it had been one bad thing after another. And instead of going and getting the professional help that I should have, and I probably should still go talk to somebody, But I'm in a lot better place now. I'm in a lot more positive place. Does depression still hit me? Yes, it still does. I still fight depression. It's always knocking on the front door trying to get in. I'm not going to dispute that in any way, shape, or form. I didn't say that I was perfect in any of my podcasts. The only thing that I'm trying to do is trying to disseminate some information for what little information I have, and I'm trying to put a little bit like a candle in the window for the most part, is trying to bring a little bit of light to this world, because there's so much negativity and there's so much bad stuff anymore, and all I want to do is try to do for my little area at my little desk here while I'm talking to you into this microphone, in trying to enlighten this world just a little bit. I know I can't do much, and my podcast will never be huge, but if I can be there for just one person to try to make their life a little bit better, that's why I do these podcasts. And what that has done is I had to change. That's part of the changing on how I viewed food, is because everything was revolved around, from breakfast to mid-snack to lunch to mid-snack to supper. And then I'd go to bed and I'd get up, because I don't sleep at night. I sleep 3-4 hours at best. So then I get up and I wander around. Well, I don't want to bother my son and turn the TV on or anything like that there. And then things would start bothering me, or I'd be stressed out about my job for the next day, or how am I going to pay this bill because the checking account says I have no more money. How am I going to do this? How am I going to put food on the table so he doesn't starve? There were so many things. And so that stress led into, well, I'll just go to the pantry and I'll get myself some chocolate rolls or something like that there to try to help myself through. And I realized it took a long time. I knew it was wrong. When you're opening up the wrapper, you look and you go, oh, I know this is bad for me. I know there's tons of, saturated fats in there. I know there's tons of calories. There's carbs. There's sugar. There's everything. It tasted so good, and it helped. It helped for about 2 minutes, let's be honest. And then the depression kicked back in. And then I got stressed out because, well, geez, I just downed 400 calories. And it's like, so then I just quit worrying about the calories. I quit worrying about the sugar. Well, that led into where I was before I started my weight loss journey, over 300 pounds overweight, and heart problems. And ever since I've started this journey, I haven't had any more heart problems. It's been nice. My migraines have gotten better. My joints don't work any better. It's just a matter of time before I'm using a cane to walk and going to be confined to a wheelchair. It's just a matter of time. But if I can slow that degradation of my body down a little bit by taking that excess fat off my body, then that's what I'm going to do. But I had to change my view on food. And I have to admit, I'm not 100% there yet. I'm a lot better. I would say I'm probably 90% there. I do very, very well. And I don't use food because I couldn't use it to self-medicate anymore. When I started on this journey, I realized at that point is like, I can't do that anymore. I can't run to the pantry or the cupboards and get some cookies or some brownies or whatever it was every time I felt bad. So the only thing that I could come up with was I had to deal with my feelings. I had to process them. I had to work through them. And if you're a man out there listening to this, that is one of the most difficult things that we ever run up against, because we're not taught how to process our pain or our feelings or how to deal with it. We're just told to repress them, kind of like a Vulcan on Star Trek. You're just supposed to repress your emotions and not worry about it. And that's all I've done all of my life. And I realized at that point when I was starting here, I can't do that anymore. I had to start working through it. So there was a lot of times where I broke down in the middle of a drive when I'm up in the hills driving around, or I'm sitting on the tailgate listening to the wind blow through the trees and watching Willow run all over and stuff and sniff and everything else, because it was like I started thinking about all the stuff that I had repressed over the past 40 years and everything that I've been through, and I just started to break down and was like, okay. And whether I know, men, you're out there and you're hopefully you're listening to, my other podcast is dedicated to men's health. I hope you're listening to that, because it's very, very hard for us to admit when, we're weak. When we need help. And I flat out admit that, and I'm one of them. I know my family's listening to on the other side of the speaker screaming at me, Sean, listen to your own advice. Well, I'm not giving advice out. All I'm telling you is everything that I'm going through. And I had to start learning to deal with these powerful emotions. Women have these emotions too. They're just lucky enough to be able to let them out. And I respect that and admire that, because they can talk about their feelings. They can let the emotions out. We're not allowed to do that. So when you're told not to do that because it's a sign of weakness, where do you turn to? What do you do? I mean, you're backed into a corner. And these are the questions that I had to figure out right away. Because remember, I didn't plan doing this weight loss journey. I just Thelma and Louised it right off the cliff. Done. On January 1st of 2022, I just, here we go. We're going to just do this. I didn't do any research. I didn't do any planning. I didn't do any prepping. Nothing. I just decided at that point, done. I went through the cupboards and threw stuff away, and my son was thinking I'd lost my mind. I know he was, because I was just tossing out lots and lots of food. Now, I mean, I just didn't throw it away. I gave it away, or he ate it, or something, but I had to get it out of the house, because I knew if it was in the house, it was easily accessible, and I couldn't have that. I wasn't strong. I was very, very weak when it comes to food, and especially when you're talking about, chocolate. I mean, that's my biggest weakness is chocolate. My second biggest weakness is Mountain Dew. Now, you've known by listening to all my episodes, I haven't given up Mountain Dew, and I will not give up Mountain Dew. There's just some sacrifices I'm not willing to make, because I had to admit to myself before I got started, okay, make the changes you can live with. And that was one of them that I was not going to give up. I've given up so much. I have sacrificed so much to get this weight off. Now, granted, I'm over 200 pounds down, and I'm doing good. I mean, that's basically like a normal human I've lost. And I'm continuing to do good. Every time I turn around, I get kind of like another, oh wow, your pants fit a little better, or your shirts fit a little better, or some of my old clothes and stuff, they literally will not even stay on my body anymore. I've lost so much weight. So you get little signs like that help you through and keep you moving forward. So when you have your weekdays, then you can basically draw strength from all those amazing little I just lost the word here, but basically all these little accomplishments. That's the word I was trying to get to. Sorry about that. All these accomplishments that you have done, you have to celebrate all those little wins, because that's what helps motivate you forward. And it took a long time for me. I mean, it took me probably 6 months to figure that one out. Like I said, I didn't do, until I started my podcast, I didn't do any research. My son would talk to me and tell me things. It wasn't until I went down to Supplement Warehouse, where I talked to the manager. He's, now a friend, and he helps me through stuff. He taught me so much stuff. I mean, I think we spent 45 minutes or an hour that first time that I walked in. I swear to God that when I walked in, because I was still huge at that point, I was so embarrassed to walk into that place, because I figured for sure that all these buff, skinny, perfect people were going to make fun of me, because the fat shaming that I've endured my whole life, it's real, and it hurts. I mean, yeah, men aren't supposed to have feelings. Well, contrary to popular disbelief, we do have feelings. They're no different than what ladies have. But we're just taught to hide them and taught to just ignore them. So I figured for sure when I walked into the place that they were going to make fun of me. And he's young. I mean, I think he's somewhere around 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there. He's very, very young. So I was expecting just to get laughed off the face of the earth. And he never did. He treated me with the utmost respect the entire time. And we came up and he told me, this is what you got to do. This is what you look for. This is what we'll do for the next steps. And then this will be the next step. After that, we'll see how you do it, because I wanted to approach everything very, very slowly, because I wanted to see how it was going to affect my body, and I didn't want to make huge changes right out of the shotgun, because I didn't want to basically go all in. And that's one thing that I learned on the other diets that I was on, is you basically fall off a cliff and you cut everything out of your life. Well, that works. I mean, you can cut back for that for a little bit, but you can't sustain it. It's just not possible. You still have to have healthy fats. You still have to have some sugar, some salt, some fats. I mean, there's just some things. You have to have carbs to keep everything going. Now, yes, I have severely restricted my back, but I'm at a level that my body will still function. I can still go to work. I can still pay my bills. and I can still have a home life. Now, am I always flirting the line of bottoming out and not, and basically, running out of energy? Yes, constantly, every day, all the time. And I still get muscle cramps. I still get bone cramps where my ribs feel like they're sucking in, and like you've got a vice around them, and it's just cranking down harder and harder. But my body is settling back into kind of like a normal size a little bit. And it's just having to pull everything back in because I was fat for so long and carried so much fat that it had to compensate for all that. Now it's having to compensate for not having it, so it's coming back in again. And it's nice. I mean, it hurts. There are many days that I still hurt really bad. But I know that once I get to where I'm at, that will level out. Things will get better. So through all of this, it all comes down to, I had to change my views on food. That's really what it come down to. And it was difficult. I mean, oh my goodness. I mean, I was raised, like I said, my mom has passed on. I loved her. She was my biggest fan and my bestest friend. But she was raised old school, just like she raised me as old school, is you always had candy and food on the counters, always. And that was the way that she showed love. I mean, she was a very, very loving and caring lady. Don't get me wrong. Everybody adored her. But old school says you always had, candies or cookies or brownies or something always sitting on the counter so you could quick grab it and keep moving. And that was her way of showing that she loved us. And that resonated in me, and I wanted to do that in my family. So when I moved out on my own and started my family, I did the same thing. I always had stuff sitting out. I always had things easily accessible at all the time. And while I was, when I was young, I split wood, hauled wood, mowed the yard, cleaned the garage. I was helping my father out with his business constantly. Then you go to school and, so I was a lot more active. So I was, I maintained my skinniness. I mean, I was skinny up until I was 15. I mean, there wasn't an ounce of fat on me. But then once I hit 16 and started at the fast food joint, and I wasn't working quite as much, the weight just piled on. And at that point, I was getting out of being abused. I was trying to work through the mental abuse that I was constantly being put through, and then trying to figure out who I was. I mean, being a teenager, we all know, is stressful enough as is. And I had to figure out how to get through all of that. And then a lady proposed to me. And we decided that it was the first lady that I trusted after being abused. And I trusted her, and I said, yes, let's get married. Because I thought, okay, well, she's gorgeous, she's picking me, this is great. Well, at the time, I didn't know what the term rebound boyfriend meant. And I fell hook, line, and sinker for her. I went all in. And 2 days later, after she proposed to me, and I gave her because I didn't have any money, I was like, I didn't have time to go buy a ring because I was caught off guard. So I just gave her my class ring, my senior class ring, to hold her over until I could get one. And it was 2 days later that she went running back to her. I mean, there's a huge story behind it, but this is just the snippet of it. But she ended up going back to her boyfriend, which they're still married, and I'm happy for them. They have lots of kids and on and on and on. But that was another shot that I just couldn't take. So that's when I ended up basically trying to take my car into a bridge at 90 mile an hour to end my life. Well, something turned the car at the very last moment. I don't know what it was. My hands weren't on the steering wheel. They weren't on the brake or nothing, but the car turned at the last moment. And at that point, that's when everything is, all of that hurt and all that pain and everything else, all translated into, I need to just go and eat, because that's how I felt. I basically self-soothed and helped myself. So I ate all the time. And being that you always had food out, it was actually really, really easy. You walk by the counter, grab a brownie, grab a cookie, whatever it is. Well, I was making, I liked to bake back then, so I made all kinds of different cookies, brownies, cakes, pies, you name it, I made it. I mean, peanut brittle during the Christmas time. You had divinity, fudge, all your typical old school foods and stuff that you made during the Christmas season. I made all those, so those helped pull me through. And then then you buy the cookies and stuff from those wonderful, kids that are out there in front of the stores and stuff there. So you'd buy 10 of those boxes just to just to support them. I always rationalized it somehow as I was always helping somebody. I was always doing it for somebody else. But the problem was in many respects, I was doing it to help myself get through the depression that I was going through. I mean, I have fought depression since, I honestly don't know, all the way back to when I was in the single digits of age, I'm sure. I don't know. I don't know a day almost without depression knocking on the door saying, hello, I'm here. And it does win some days, but it's never won to the point to where I wanted to end my life again. And every time I turn around, I've heard somebody that's doing it because things are so bad, and it breaks my heart because I would like to be able to help them and pull them back from that brink and say it's going to be okay. But like I said, the food addiction is probably what pulled me through, so I didn't attempt it a second time. And then I was lucky enough, and my son come along, and he taught me how to be a better man, how to be a stronger man, be a better person. My mom walked me through a lot during that time. They didn't know I even tried. It was probably 15 years after I attempted suicide before they found out. And that broke my mom's heart, which broke my heart. And, it's downhill from there. Then, of course, there's more eating. And that led me going to a fast food restaurant and buying all kinds of food and buying $40 worth of food. And it was just downhill. Now, granted, I love the old school way of keeping food out on the counters and everything else. Don't get me wrong. And I had to quit doing that when I started this whole weight loss journey that I was on, and it kind of broke my heart because that's a tradition. And I like, I know traditions need to change within time, and you always pick up new ones. And I just had to find a different way because I knew personally I was a food addict. That's all really what it come down to. No matter what I've said, if I used it for therapy, if I used it to help, if I used it whatever, I was a food addict. It didn't matter. I had to be eating constantly. I had to have food in my truck. I had to have food at my desk at work. If there was any place, I have a survival gear full of food. I had food in my bedroom there, so I didn't have to go so far there to eat when I would be depressed and I'd wake up and I was down. I could down some chocolate rolls or something like that. And that was one of the hardest things that I had to figure out how to do. Is I couldn't do that anymore when I started my weight loss journey. So the only thing that I could come up with was I had to actually start processing and dealing with these complex emotions. I had to forgive grudges. I had to forgive people. I had to basically move on. Some of the things I was still stuck in the past with because I had been so hurt and so traumatized, I was stuck there. And by doing this weight loss journey, it actually helped me mentally, helped me out a ton. But the first 6 months was brutal. Besides the cravings that you go through, the detoxification that you go through, the vitamin deficiencies that you try to figure out, trying to figure out where you can function adequately as low as you can while watching your calories. And then dealing with all the mental stuff that was continuing on, and all the everything else that we've gone through. It was a ton. It literally, this weight loss journey has taxed every patient that I have, every ounce of strength that I have. It has pushed me to limits that I didn't know I had. But I'm proud to say that I've persevered through them. I've pushed through them, and it is a lot easier anymore. And people have, they're wonderful. I have a wonderful support group. My family is wonderful. They're 100% supportive. They're careful with, food-wise and stuff. And I don't have those cravings or urges anymore. I've come a long ways. Like I said, the first 6 months was the toughest. The first 3-4 months was absolutely murderously brutal while you're detoxifying and changing and doing different things. It was like, wow, this is insane, trying to get your body to change, because your body fights you every step of the way on this. It's just like, holy smokes. But what I realized was there's basically, to find out if you're a food addict, and this kind of works with addictive, basically substances as well, there's 5 signs to look for. And I had all of these signs and I didn't know it. Like I said, I've told you many times, I didn't do any research before I started my weight loss journey. I've only been doing the research since I started the podcast, because anything I want to talk to you guys about, I try to do my very absolute best to do my due diligence to make sure that the information I'm talking about is correct. And as you all know, there is a flood of information. It is insane out there. So I went back to the books and I tried to figure this out, and I forgot to write down the person that came up with these 6 things, these 6 signs, and I feel so horrible about it. So I am so sorry. I'm not trying to take credit because I didn't come up with these, but I thought I would like to talk about these with you guys. And I just wish if I could find the article, I will pay homage at that point and respect at that point, and I will try to find it again. But this, I believe it was a gentleman that wrote these up, and so he put them together, and these are the 5 signs, and then he put an additional one in at the very end. But the first one, to find out if you're a food addict, is cravings and obsessions. And it comes down to, do you crave specific foods, or do the foods or food intrude or obsessively occupy your thoughts? And that's what I've been talking about so far. Is food was everything to me. I mean, there wasn't a moment that food wasn't running through me. Now that hasn't changed a ton. I'm always thinking about, gee, I would like this, or I'd like that, or whatever. It has gotten better, but I'm not sure that these thoughts will ever fully go away, and that's the part that I'm fighting constantly. And you fight with your weight loss journey because you think, oh wow, I would like this, or you get that, or I really would like to go and get some ice cream or some cookies or something. And one thing that I've done is, as I'm learning, as I'm going through this stuff, there's a diet plan out there. Yeah, I know I said diet, and I know you're all kind of, but it's called an 80-20 diet, and I've been doing a little research, and I don't understand it all yet, so I'm not going to talk much about it. But all I know is if you're good 80% of the time and eat everything you're supposed to, then 20% of the time you can have like your desserts, and you can, on a limited basis, you can have your desserts or your sweet treats or anything there to celebrate doing good 80% of the time, because nobody can maintain anything 100% of the time. It's just not possible. And I do have cravings once in a while, and one thing that I've learned is to indulge them. So if I want that ice cream, I go get a little itty-bitty little container of it. And most of them I don't get through it, and then my son will eat it, or a friend will eat it, or something like that. We'll finish up. I have a few bites out of it and done, and I walk away. And you're probably thinking, well, I don't have the strength to do it. I have to admit, in the beginning, I couldn't indulge any cravings for probably the first year. I had to basically keep myself completely away from them, because I had to develop the strength to be able to stand there and say, I can only have a little bit of it, and I do, and I'm very good about it now. Would I like to? If you have to, pour it in a smaller container, so that way if you eat the whole container, that's what you're allowed to have. That way you feel better about it, and you're not taking the whole thing, where if you have like a whole quart or something like that there, take a couple scoops out, put it in a bowl, and that's all you eat. So when you get to the end of it, you don't have to feel guilty, but you indulge that craving. And once I indulge that craving goes away, then I don't think about it as much anymore. Then it kind of gets shelved on the back shelf there, and I don't have that in that voice going, have some more, eat this, have some brownies. If you can stay away from that stuff, it helps. Like I said, it's not 100% science. It's not the easiest, but I'm doing everything that I can. Another one, the next step was tolerance, and it says, do you need to eat more of your trigger foods to get the same effect? Do you try to get a moment of satisfaction from the food that never seems to happen? And that's where I was at too, is like every time I would eat that, it lasted about 2 minutes, and then I was back to the depression again. Things were bothering me, and it was just like, son of a gun, it's just like, I just had this to feel better, and yet it doesn't help. And it says the surge of dopamine caused initially by the addictive substance causes the brain to reduce its dopamine receptors in order to maintain homeostasis. This means you need to eat more of the trigger food now to get the same effect. And that's why, and I didn't realize that until I read this, and I was like, well, son of a gun, that's why I always felt so bad after eating it, because it was never enough. So then you would eat more because you want to try to make up ground. Well, now that I read this, it's like, okay, well, now this makes sense. It's like, okay, all right, now I can move past it. Next one was lack of control. Do you find that you can't stop at just 1 or 2 of your favorite foods? Do you eat in secret? Are you embarrassed about the way you eat? These are great questions, because I can answer yes to them all, because I literally couldn't in the beginning when I first started at the fast food restaurant. I ate decently. It wasn't bad. I had just a regular, combo or whatever it was. Well, as I was going on and going through all of that stuff, all of a sudden it turned into 3 and 4 and 5 combos. Well, that's when I was getting myself into trouble, because I was eating my emotions. So my lack of control went from doing real good to basically 0. And it was just like, okay, well, if I want it, I'm just going to eat it. Nobody can stop me anymore, because I'm 18 and I'm old enough, and nobody can tell me what to do. And that was a dangerous thing right there. And it was just a snowball effect at that point. The next one they said, is called impairment. Are you suffering consequences to your health, your weight, or your relationships, but you continue eating foods that you know you should not eat? And that is absolutely huge. Then it goes into, do you have obesity, diabetes, high blood pressure, fatty liver, or other health conditions that you know could be improved if you changed in how you eat? And I mean, I've never had high blood pressure, but diabetes runs horrible in our family. Obesity is bad. I was super obese. I don't know how else to say it and stuff. And I'm still labeled as obese, but I'm not as bad as what I used to be, and I know I'm going the right way. So, if you're unable to eat, certain foods, knowing they're bad for your health, and if it's causing troubles at home or in your relationship or whatever, you're going to have to find a way to fight that. And that's one thing that I had to work through. That was probably one of the toughest ones that I had to work through, because I knew it was damaging my health. There's no doubt about that one there. I mean, you can't have 300 pounds of excess fat on your body and it not mess with your organs and your joints and your muscles and just your mental status. I mean, it messed with me mentally so bad. So that led into step 5, which is dependence. Basically, when you try to stop, do you find it's too hard and then give up? When you try to stop, do the cravings get worse or intolerable? When you stop, do you experience withdrawal such as agitation, anxiety, insomnia, anger, and irritability? Do you feel foggy, tired, or low energy? I nailed all of them. I mean, that's 100% me. That's what it was. And I read through that, and I just realized, it's like, holy guacamole, how did I even make it? I mean, as I was going through writing all my notes up for this podcast, I'm looking there and I'm going, how did I even make it to 48 when I started my weight loss journey? I don't even know how I made it, to be honest. I mean, it's just like, all this stuff was against me. It was like, holy smokes. So my dependence on food was huge. I mean, it was more than just, we all need food to survive. There's no doubt about that one there. You need it for the, for the chemical changes out there to turn it into energy. When you eat, it turns into energy. Energy is burnt by the body so you can keep moving. But I mean, I went way above and beyond for what my dependence was on food. And I realized at that point that, when I started my journey, that had to change. And I like I said, I did all of this stuff without even doing research. I made these changes. I mean, this is stuff that bothered me, and this is stuff that I had to work through. And I swear in the Bible, I never looked one single thing up before I dove off the cliff and did my weight loss journey. So it was like, okay. So then they threw in a 6th sign, which is denial. Do you tell yourself that it isn't bad, even though you know it is? Do you promise yourself you'll stop tomorrow? Do you minimize the health or weight impacts of your trigger foods or the consequences eating it? And that's a yes for all of them for me too. So I had all 6 triggers, all 6 signs of a food addict. I mean, I probably should have been a poster boy for for that stuff. So to go through all of that, it was like, okay, I got to make changes, and that's when I did. But honestly, I didn't know about any of this stuff before I started. So the more I do research into these for my podcast, is like, holy smokes, how did I even make it to 48? How did my body continue to function the way I was treating it, the way I was abusing it? It was like, holy cow. So what I wanted to do as the last little bit of the podcast for today, it was basically, I wanted to try to do, here are some of the things that I did to break the food train that I was on. I was, because every time you would eat, that would lead into depression. Depression would make me eat more. That would go back into eat. So you did basically a circle constantly. And it was just like, okay, how do I get off this insane, crazy train so I can start doing the right things, start being healthier and protecting my health so I can be here for my family? So some of the things that I did, and it's up to you guys if you want to, maybe some of you have tried these, maybe, maybe you hadn't thought of them. These are just some of the things that I did. And hopefully there's something here that will help you. I got rid of all the bad or unhealthy items in my home. And like I said, that's when my son was looking at me on January 1st of 2022. And he thought I just went crazy. But I had to get that stuff out of the house because I wasn't strong enough to say no to it. And I had to get rid of it. That's just really what it come down. If it's not in the house, you can't eat it. So by doing that, and then I put in, I took all the unhealthy food out and I put in better food and snacks in my home. I went and spent a bunch of money on the good stuff. In the beginning, I was cranky. I admit that. I mean, I was just hateful towards the world because my body was going through withdrawals. And withdrawals, oh my goodness sakes, those stink. And all the healthy foods and stuff wasn't cutting what I needed it to. I needed the sugar, I needed the chocolate, I needed all that stuff, but I knew I couldn't do it. I had to find a way to push through it, and I did. I started writing to help myself through the trauma that I had gone through in my life. And that's why I've written, I've got 7 books out there. I've published 4, and I just haven't had much time to continue writing because everything's went into the podcast. But I wrote books, and what I did is I put the traumas and everything in my books to help me work through them. Instead of, like I said, a lot of people go to a therapist, and I commend you for it. Please go. I mean, that's what they're there for. But to me, I never had the money, and I was just taught not to go. So I had to find a way, and a journal wasn't cutting it, so I wrote books. And that's what I did there to help myself go through. I told myself there's no going back, and I did not allow myself to quit this time. And that's hard. I mean, to make that kind of commitment, that is difficult. And now that I'm 21 months into my journey, there's nothing that's going to break my will or my spirit to give up on this. I have come way too far. I'm seeing the benefits. I'm feeling the benefits. My health is getting better. Everything's better now, and there's no way. But in the beginning, it was just like I had to, every day it was like, no, you can't quit. No, you can't quit. And I had to constantly tell myself that. It's like, you can't quit. You can't backstep. You have to do this for your health, and you have to do it for your family. So that's what I did. I use supplements now to help me lose the fat. And the key word there is help me. I don't have them do all the work for me. Supplements won't do that. Supplements are an addendum on to what you're doing. That's why they're called supplements. And could I have come as far as what I have without them? Yes, I would have still made the journey, but the supplements are helping take the fat off even faster. It's protecting my muscles, multivitamins and everything there. They're helping. So that helps with the changes my body's going through, and it's helping ease the changes a little bit. So, supplements have come a long ways. Yes, do I spend money on them? Yes, they're not on the cheap side. But for me, I know that it's easier for me to take the supplements and continue on with them, so that way I can continue to lose my weight and keep moving. So, and then the biggest thing is I set myself up for success by getting the tools I needed to win. And some of the tools that I got is I bought better and healthier foods. Yes, it's expensive. I'm not arguing that point. Food is so stinking expensive anymore. It's ridiculous. But I have to spend it, and I just had to cut back in other areas and adjust the budget to accommodate them. Bought the Blackstone griddle. My son and I use that constantly. That has been such a saver. It is wonderful. We cook outside. We make all kinds of healthy meals. We cook healthier. I mean, it's fantastic. I mean, I can't say enough about the Blackstone griddle that we got. I forgave who I needed to and got rid of all the grudges I was holding on to for a lifetime. And that was the mental part that I had to set right. I had to get myself cleared and get myself on the right foot, is going through and forgiving people. And yes, it hurts, but it was kind of like, I have to do it for because it's all it is poison to you. When you hold a grudge, all that is poison inside you that's just eating you up. They're not getting anything out of it. You're just hurting yourself. So I had to give some of the grudges I had held on to for 30 years, and I didn't even know why I was holding grudges anymore. I didn't even remember the reason why I started. So by doing that took an immense strain off of me. It helped out big time. I got snacks that I could eat to help me through at work and home. I set myself up for good snacks. That was a huge thing, is I knew I was going to snack. So if you're going to snack, get the right ones that you can. I mean, don't lie to yourself. You say, I'll never have another snack. I can make it from breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's no way. Everybody snacks once in a while. Just set yourself up to win by getting the healthy ones. I'm keeping my old clothes that no longer fit as a reminder of how far I've come. And to me, that's a big one there, because it's like a safety net for me, knowing, okay, well, they're too big to wear anymore, but yet if I get rid of them, I'm afraid I'll backpedal and then I will need them again. So if I hang on to them, it's kind of like a safety buffer, and that's what I use them for. I do research on how best to overcome food addiction, so I don't repeat the same steps that led me to my 300 plus pounds of fat. Like I said, I didn't do any research before I jumped off the cliff and started my weight loss journey. It probably would have been a little bit easier in the transition phase, but now I'm learning more and more, and it's helping me stay strong and stay on my weight loss journey by learning all this stuff. And it helps by talking to you kind folks out there and you guys listening to the podcast. It just helps me, because I get to learn and then I get to disseminate some information to help you. And I hope in some small way that this helps a little bit for you. But now that I'm 21 months into my journey, the thought of messing up and starting over to eat some bad things just isn't appealing anymore. I've moved past that, and it's amazing, because I never thought I would ever get to that point. There's no way I'd want to start over anymore and give up how far I've come. I've worked too hard to get to where I'm at. And maybe in the future I'll see a therapist and talk to them and get my head a little bit more straightened out. But I have come so far, and I don't speak highly of myself, and everybody that knows me knows that, but I'm proud of how far I've come. I'm proud of the road that I've traveled. It's been a very difficult road. It's not easy in any way. So when you start your weight loss journey, if you think it's going to be just, set the cruise in the truck at 65 and cruise down interstate, it's not. There's going to be bumps, there's going to be hills, there's going to be pitfalls, there's going to be all kinds of things, and you have to be ready for that. And I'm hoping something in these podcasts will help you get to that point. But food addiction is a difficult one to break, and it's constantly there trying to pull you back into its grip and force you to start eating again. But you can't let it win. I'm just letting you know right now. Every day is a struggle for me, but I'm winning the battle, and hopefully within a year I will have won the war and be at the weight and size that I want to be. And that's the goal that I've put forward. I'm noticing by the time on my monitor and stuff that I am out of time. I'm pretty well burnt up, and I've bent your guys' ear for about 50 minutes now. So remember, I believe in you. You have got this. If you're on your own weight loss journey, I'm so proud of you. Remember, I'm hoping you guys will start posting to the Facebook page, everything that you're doing, pictures of how far you've come. If you have questions, if there's something that I can try to help with, send it to my email at seangmorris@gmail.com, and I will do everything I can to try to help you. If I don't have the answer, I'll let you know, or I'll try to do research and try to point you in the right direction. Remember to like, share, comment on the pages, everything. All of that stuff helps out. We're gaining ground. It's getting a little bit easier to find the podcast now. We're almost 6 months into it now. So it's getting a little bit easier to find it, and we're helping more and more people. They're all our extended family, so I want to try to help as many people as we can. So that all leads into, as your guys' favorite part of the entire podcast, the dad joke of the day. So to end the podcast, if you are ready to go, here's the dad joke of the day. Do you know why Cinderella was so bad at soccer? Because she kept running away from the ball. Hope you like that one. Thanks so much for listening. You guys are amazing. Remember, you got this. I believe in you, and you're going to get across that finish line, and you'll be happy. We'll both be there to celebrate at the same time. So, as always, all my love and support.